I think we can take it. I'll go for that.
Stop throwing for your feathers!
What feathers? These? Swim as one! Burn your belly down, and those who survive...
What's the plan? No.
Did you know that Netflix animated fantasy adventure takes a simple body swap concept and turns it into an emotional story about friendship, prejudice, and survival? Featuring the voices of Michael B. Jordan and Juno Temple, the film is set in a magical valley filled with strange animal plant hybrid creatures. What begins as a colorful adventure soon becomes a story about two enemies who must learn to understand each other before their entire world falls apart. The story opens in a beautiful valley where different species live, separated from one another. Among them are the pukus, small otter like creatures who live on an island surrounded by water. They are peaceful, hardworking, and extremely cautious of outsiders. One young puku named Ollie, however, is different from everyone else. While others are satisfied with their simple lives, Ollie is curious about the world beyond the island. He constantly asks questions, explores places he shouldn't, and dreams about discovering what lies across the valley. His adventurous nature often worries his parents, who believe curiosity can lead to danger. One evening, Ollie listens to a fascinating story told by his grandmother. She explains that long ago, all creatures in the valley lived together in harmony. Back then, magical beings known as the Zoo helped different species understand one another. The zoo possessed magical pods that allowed creatures to change forms and experience life through another creature's eyes. Because everyone could understand each other's struggles, peace existed throughout the valley. But that peace didn't last forever. According to the legend, a terrifying creature known as the firewolf became jealous of the harmony that existed among the valley's inhabitants. The firewolf wanted power and believed understanding others made creatures weak. After stealing one of the magical pods, it gained destructive fire abilities and attacked the zoo. The resulting chaos caused a massive disaster that separated the valley into different territories. Rivers changed course, giant rock slides blocked important routes, and species that once cooperated became isolated from one another. Since that day, fear replaced trust, and every group learned to avoid outsiders. Although Ollie's family treats the story as a warning, Ollie sees it differently. To him, the tale sounds like an invitation to explore. He becomes fascinated by the idea that creatures from different species once lived side by side. The more he thinks about it, the more he wants to meet someone from beyond the island. Unfortunately, that opportunity arrives sooner than anyone expects. During a harvest celebration, the Pukus gather food and celebrate another successful season. While exploring near the edge of the island, Ollie discovers a young Javan bird struggling to reach food. Instead of running away, he decides to help. The little bird seems harmless, and Ollie feels sorry for her. He teaches her a simple trick that allows her to access the island's precious food supply. For a brief moment, it feels as though the old stories about friendship between species might actually be true. However, Ollie's kindness soon creates an unexpected disaster. After learning the secret, the young bird returns with other Javans. Before long, large numbers of birds begin invading the harvest area and consuming food that the Pukus desperately need. The island's carefully protected food reserves start disappearing. Panic spreads among the Puku community, and many blame Ollie for revealing their secret. What he believed was an act of friendship quickly becomes one of the biggest mistakes of his life. Years pass, but the consequences of that single decision never disappear. The Pukus continue struggling with food shortages, and many members of the community still resent Ollie. Even his father has difficulty forgiving what happened. Although Ollie has grown older, he continues carrying the guilt every day. Deep down, he wishes he could somehow fix the damage he caused. Unfortunately, every attempt to help seems to make things worse. Determined to protect his people, Ollie develops a risky plan. Using reflective glass fragments, he tries to scare away the Javans and reclaim the harvest area. At first, the plan appears successful, but things quickly spiral out of control. A confrontation with one of the birds sends Ollie tumbling into a hidden underground hole. Injured and trapped, he desperately searches for a way out. While climbing through the darkness, he discovers something that shouldn't exist anymore, a mysterious magical pod from the ancient legends. Without realizing the danger, Ollie accidentally activates the pod. Suddenly, powerful magic surrounds him. His body begins changing in ways he cannot understand. Within moments, the young Puku has transformed into something impossible, a Javan. Terrified and confused, Ollie stares at his new form. He has become the very creature his people consider an enemy. Before he can process what happened, he is forced to flee, beginning an adventure that will completely change his understanding of the world. Ollie can hardly believe what has happened to him. Only moments ago, he was a young Puku trying to help his community. Now, after activating the mysterious magical pod, he finds himself trapped inside the body of a Javan bird. Every movement feels strange. His arms are now wings, his voice sounds different, and even his balance has completely changed. Panic races through his mind as he stumbles through the forest, desperately trying to understand how such a thing could happen. The stories told by his grandmother suddenly seem very real. As Ollie struggles to adjust, he quickly discovers that living as a Javan is far more difficult than he imagined. He had always viewed the birds as greedy invaders who only cared about stealing food from others. But now that he is forced to live among them, he begins seeing a completely different side of their world. The Javans face hardships of their own. Food is scarce in their territory, predators constantly threaten their nests, and many families struggle simply to survive from one season to the next. Meanwhile, back on the island, the Pukus are shocked by Ollie's disappearance. His family organizes search parties and spends days looking for him. Although some members of the community still blame him for past mistakes, many begin realizing how much they care about him. His absence creates a void that reminds everyone that Ollie is more than just the young troublemaker who once made a bad decision. Beneath all his mistakes, he has always wanted what was best for his people. Far away from home, Ollie's problems continue growing. While exploring the Javan territory, he accidentally attracts the attention of Ivy, a clever young bird who dreams of proving herself to her clan. Ivy immediately notices that something seems unusual about him. His behavior is strange, his knowledge of bird customs is poor, and he often asks questions that no Javan would normally ask. Suspicion begins growing in her mind, but curiosity prevents her from exposing him right away. The situation becomes even more complicated when Ivy discovers another magical pod hidden deep within the valley. Believing it might contain valuable power, she decides to investigate. However, just like Ollie before her, she accidentally activates the ancient magic. A bright flash erupts around her, filling the forest with glowing energy. Seconds later, the impossible happens once again. Ivy finds herself transformed into a puku. Now both characters are trapped in each other's species. Ollie is living as a bird, while Ivy is stuck inside the body of a puku. Neither understands how to reverse the transformation, and neither trusts the other. Their first meeting after the swap is filled with confusion, accusations, and frustration. Ollie blames Ivy for making things worse, while Ivy accuses Ollie of hiding important information. The two quickly discover that working together will not be easy. Despite their differences, circumstances force them into an uneasy partnership. The magical pods appear connected to ancient legends about the zoo, and the only hope of returning to their normal bodies is finding answers hidden somewhere within the valley. Reluctantly, they agree to travel together. Neither enjoys the arrangement, but they have no better option. Their journey begins with constant arguments. Every small obstacle becomes a reason to blame one another. Ollie complains about Ivy's stubborn attitude, while Ivy criticizes Ollie's reckless decisions. Yet, something interesting starts happening as they travel. By living inside each other's species, they begin experiencing challenges they never understood before. Ollie learns how difficult it is for birds to find safe places to nest. Ivy experiences the pressure pukus face when protecting limited food supplies. The more they learn, the harder it becomes to maintain their old prejudices. Stories they were told as children start falling apart. Ollie realizes the Javans are not simply thieves, and Ivy discovers the Pukus are not selfish hoarders. Instead, both groups are struggling with different versions of the same problem: survival. Years of fear and misunderstanding have convinced each side that the other is the enemy, when in reality, both are victims of circumstances beyond their control. As their friendship slowly develops, they encounter clues pointing toward a forgotten part of the ancient legend. According to scattered records left behind by the zoo, the magical pods were never intended to be weapons or tools of chaos. Their true purpose was to create empathy. By allowing creatures to experience life through another species' perspective, the pods helped prevent conflict and build understanding. The entire valley once depended on this magical connection. This revelation changes everything. Ollie and Ivy begin suspecting that someone has deliberately hidden the truth about the valley's history. If the ancient system of understanding could be restored, perhaps the growing tensions between species could finally end. But before they can learn more, a new threat emerges from the shadows. Strange signs begin appearing throughout the valley: burned forests, frightened animals, and mysterious tracks that seem connected to the legendary fire wolf. At first, they dismiss the signs as coincidence. After all, the fire wolf is supposed to be nothing more than an old story used to frighten children. Yet the evidence keeps growing. Villages report unusual attacks, ancient landmarks show signs of damage, and rumors spread faster with each passing day. Something dangerous is moving through the valley, and its presence threatens every creature, regardless of species. By the end of this stage of their journey, Ollie and Ivy finally realize that their personal struggle is connected to something much larger. Their body swap is not a random accident. The magical pods, the forgotten history, and the mysterious disturbances all seem linked to a hidden danger that could affect the entire valley. If they hope to save themselves and return to their original forms, they must uncover the truth before it is too late. For the first time since their adventure began, Ollie and Ivy stop seeing each other as enemies. They may still argue and they may still come from different worlds, but they now share a common goal. Together, they set out toward the heart of the valley, unaware that the greatest challenges of their journey are still waiting ahead. As Ollie and Ivy continue deeper into the valley, the tension between them slowly begins to fade. The constant arguments that once filled every step of their journey are becoming less frequent. They still disagree on many things, but now those disagreements are mixed with growing respect. Living in each other's bodies has forced them to see the world from completely different perspectives. For the first time in their lives, both of them are beginning to understand how dangerous assumptions can be. The valley itself becomes more mysterious the farther they travel. Ancient ruins appear hidden among thick forests and towering cliffs. Strange symbols carved into stone suggest that advanced civilizations once thrived here long before the current species became divided. Every discovery seems to support the stories about the zoo. These magical beings were far more influential than anyone had imagined. Their technology and magic connected creatures across the valley, allowing cooperation that now seems impossible. One evening, while taking shelter inside a forgotten temple, Ollie and Ivy uncover an ancient mural covering an entire wall. The artwork shows creatures of every species living together peacefully. At the center of the mural stand several zoo holding glowing pods. Around them, animals exchange forms and share experiences. The message is clear. Understanding one another was once considered the foundation of peace. Neither Ollie nor Ivy can ignore the symbolism. The very thing their societies fear today was once celebrated. As they study the mural, they discover something even more important. Hidden among the paintings is a warning about the firewolf. According to the ancient records, the firewolf was not born evil. Long ago, it was an ordinary creature consumed by fear and resentment. Instead of using the power of the pods to understand others, it used them to gain control. The more power it acquired, the more isolated it became. Eventually, its anger transformed it into something destructive that threatened the entire valley. This revelation shocks both travelers. The story sounds strangely familiar. Even today, fear continues, separating species from one another. Communities teach their children to distrust outsiders. Rumors replace facts, and old conflicts continue for generations without anyone remembering how they started. Ollie realizes that the valley may be repeating the same mistakes that created the firewolf in the first place. The next stage of their journey leads them through a dangerous canyon known for violent storms. Strong winds make travel nearly impossible, especially since both are still trapped in unfamiliar bodies. Ivy struggles with the physical limitations of being a puku, while Ollie continues adapting to life as a bird. What once felt like a curse is slowly becoming an advantage. Because they understand both species, they can solve problems in ways neither could alone. During one particularly dangerous storm, a massive rock slide blocks their path. Falling debris threatens to crush them, forcing the pair to work together under extreme pressure. Ollie uses his aerial perspective to identify a safe route, while Ivy's strength helps clear obstacles. Their teamwork saves them from disaster. Afterward, they share a rare moment of honesty. Neither would have survived alone. For the first time, they openly acknowledge how much they depend on each other. As their friendship grows, they begin exchanging stories about their childhoods. Ollie talks about the guilt he has carried since the food crisis on his island. He admits that many nights he wondered whether his community would ever forgive him. Ivy shares her own insecurities. Despite appearing confident, she has always felt pressure to prove herself. Many members of her clan considered her reckless and immature. She constantly feared disappointing those around her. These conversations reveal how similar they truly are. Both have spent years trying to earn acceptance. Both have made mistakes. Both want to protect the people they care about. The differences that once seemed enormous suddenly feel insignificant compared to what they have in common. Their growing bond is soon tested when they arrive at a remote settlement inhabited by creatures who still remember fragments of the old world. The village elders recognize the magical transformations immediately. Unlike most creatures in the valley, they have preserved knowledge about the zoo and the ancient pods. According to the elders, the body swap can only be reversed by reaching a sacred sanctuary hidden deep within the mountains. The sanctuary is said to contain the heart pod, the original source from which all other pods were created. If activated correctly, it possesses the power to restore balance and reverse transformations. However, the elders also deliver troubling news. Recently, dark forces have been searching for the sanctuary as well. Several explorers have disappeared, and strange creatures corrupted by fire magic have been spotted near the mountain passes. The warnings confirm Ollie and Ivy's fears. Whatever is happening across the valley is escalating rapidly. The mysterious attacks are no longer isolated incidents. Something is actively searching for ancient Zoo power. If the wrong individual reaches the hard pot first, the consequences could be catastrophic. Determined to prevent disaster, the pair set out toward the mountains. Their journey becomes increasingly dangerous with every passing day. Burned forests stretch across once beautiful landscapes. Rivers have been contaminated by dark energy. Animals flee from regions where unnatural fires continue burning without fuel. The signs all point toward the same conclusion. The firewolf legend may not be a legend at all. One night, while camping near the mountain range, Ollie notices glowing eyes watching them from the darkness. Moments later, shadowy creatures attack. These beasts move with unnatural speed and aggression. Their bodies bear strange markings, similar to those depicted in the ancient murals. The battle that follows is their most dangerous encounter yet. Working together, Ollie and Ivy manage to escape, but the attack leaves them shaken. More importantly, it confirms that someone or something is gathering power. The creatures behaved as though they were being controlled by a larger force. Whatever lies ahead is becoming impossible to ignore. As dawn rises over the mountains, the two friends stand overlooking the valley below. What began as an accidental body swap has evolved into a mission that could determine the future of every species. They are no longer simply trying to return home, they are trying to stop a threat that could destroy everything. Ahead of them lies the path to the sanctuary and the answers they desperately seek. But hidden somewhere beyond those mountains, a powerful enemy is also moving closer to the heart pod, and with each passing day, the race to reach it first becomes more dangerous than ever. The sunrise over the mountains brings little comfort to Ollie and Ivy. After surviving the mysterious attack during the night, both know their journey has entered a far more dangerous phase. The shadow creatures they encountered were unlike anything described in ordinary stories. They moved as if controlled by a single mind, driven by a purpose neither Ollie nor Ivy fully understands. Whatever force is awakening in the valley, it is growing stronger with every passing day. The path toward the sanctuary becomes increasingly difficult. Narrow trails wind along steep cliffs where one wrong step could send them plunging into deep ravines. Harsh weather slows their progress, and signs of destruction become more common. Entire sections of forest have been reduced to blackened ruins. Trees stand like skeletons against the sky, their branches twisted by unnatural heat. Even the wildlife behaves strangely, fleeing areas touched by the mysterious fire. As they travel, Ivy notices that Ollie has changed significantly since the beginning of their adventure. The impulsive young Puku who once rushed into danger without thinking is becoming more careful and thoughtful. Experience has taught him that every action carries consequences. Ollie notices similar changes in Ivy. Her constant need to prove herself is slowly giving way to confidence built on genuine achievement rather than reckless risks. One afternoon, they reach a massive stone bridge spanning a deep canyon. Ancient symbols cover its surface, indicating it was built by the Zhou centuries ago. In the center of the bridge stands a large crystal pillar glowing with faint energy. Curious, Ollie approaches and touches the crystal. Instantly, visions flood his mind. He sees scenes from the distant past. The valley appears united, filled with creatures working together. Those scholars teach others how to use the magical pods responsibly. Species exchange experiences through body swapping ceremonies designed to build empathy and understanding. For a moment, Ollie witnesses a world free from prejudice and fear, but the vision quickly changes. Darkness spreads across the valley. A powerful figure emerges from the shadows, consumed by bitterness and obsession. The creature steals ancient knowledge and twists the purpose of the pods. Instead of using them to create understanding, it uses them to dominate others. Flames engulf entire settlements as panic spreads. The once peaceful valley collapses into chaos. When the vision ends, Ollie falls to his knees, shaken by what he has seen. The experience confirms something important. The firewolf was not simply a monster. It was the result of fear, pride, and unchecked power. Understanding this history makes Ollie realize that anyone could potentially follow the same path if they allow anger to control them. The lesson feels especially relevant given the growing conflicts between species today. Continuing onward, the pair finally reaches the foothills surrounding the sacred sanctuary. There they encounter a group of travelers from different species who have formed a small resistance against the mysterious attacks spreading across the valley. Unlike most communities, these individuals work together regardless of their backgrounds. Their cooperation reminds Ollie and Ivy of the ancient world they saw in the visions. The resistance leader explains that reports of strange activity have increased dramatically in recent weeks. Entire villages have disappeared overnight. Ancient artifacts are being stolen. Most troubling of all, witnesses claim to have seen a gigantic fiery creature moving through remote regions of the valley. Few survive long enough to provide detailed descriptions. Many dismiss these stories as fear-driven rumors. Others are not so sure. The resistance agrees to help Ollie and Ivy reach the sanctuary, believing the heart pod may hold the key to stopping whatever threat is emerging. Together, they begin preparing for the final stage of the journey. That night, around a campfire, the group shares stories from different parts of the valley. As Ollie listens, he notices a pattern. Every species has its own version of history. Each believes itself to be the victim of past conflicts while viewing others as responsible for the valley's problems. Yet the more stories he hears, the more obvious it becomes that everyone has been trapped in the same cycle of misunderstanding for generations. The realization strengthens his resolve. If they survive this mission, he wants to help change things. The following morning, disaster strikes. Before the group can leave camp, shadow creatures attack from every direction. Unlike previous encounters, these creatures are larger, stronger, and far more organized. The battle quickly turns chaotic. Resistance fighters struggle to hold their positions as waves of enemies surge through the camp.
Ollie and Ivy fight side by side, protecting each other as they retreat toward the mountains. During the battle, several attackers reveal glowing symbols identical to those found in ancient Zhou ruins. The markings pulse with dark energy, suggesting they have been corrupted by some powerful force. Just when defeat seems inevitable, a loud roar echoes across the valley. The sound is unlike anything either of them has ever heard. The attackers immediately stop and retreat into the wilderness as if responding to a command. An eerie silence follows. Everyone knows what they heard. The roar belongs to something enormous, something powerful, something very close. The resistance leader wastes no time. He urges everyone to move quickly before the creature returns. According to ancient records, the sanctuary lies only a few hours away. If they can reach it, they may finally uncover the truth behind the attacks. Exhausted but determined, Ollie and Ivy continue climbing higher into the mountains. By sunset, the sanctuary finally comes into view. Hidden among towering cliffs stands a magnificent structure untouched by time. Crystal towers rise from the rock, glowing softly in the fading light. Ancient pathways lead toward a central chamber where the heart pod is said to rest. The sight fills both travelers with hope. After finally reaching the ancient sanctuary, Ollie and Ivy are shocked to discover that the massive stone gates protecting the sacred place have already been opened. The sight immediately fills them with fear because it means someone else has reached the heart pod before them. As they cautiously step inside, they find themselves surrounded by towering crystal pillars, glowing symbols, and ancient technology left behind by the Zhou civilization. The sanctuary feels alive, almost as if it remembers everything that has happened throughout history. Strange visions begin appearing around them, showing scenes from the distant past. They witness creatures from different species living peacefully together, while the Zhou use magical pods to help everyone understand one another. These images confirm what Ollie and Ivy have slowly learned throughout their journey. The valley was once united, and fear was responsible for tearing it apart. The deeper they travel into the sanctuary, the more they realize that the truth hidden here could change the future of every creature living in the valley. Eventually, they arrive at the central chamber where the legendary heart pod is suspended above a giant platform. The artifact is far larger and more powerful than either of them imagined. Bright energy pulses through its surface, filling the room with a low hum that seems to vibrate through the entire structure. However, something is terribly wrong. Dark cracks have begun spreading across the heart pod, corrupting its energy and turning its beautiful glow into something sinister. Before Ollie and Ivy can understand what is happening, a mysterious figure emerges from the shadows. The creature resembles the legendary firewolf described in ancient stories, but it quickly reveals an even more disturbing truth. The firewolf is not a single immortal monster. Instead, it is a title inherited by those who embrace fear, hatred, and division. Throughout history, whenever conflict dominates the valley, someone rises to continue the firewolf's legacy. The creature standing before them is simply the latest bearer of that title, and it intends to finish what the original firewolf started centuries ago. The firewolf explains that it has spent years manipulating events across the valley. By encouraging fear between species and spreading mistrust among different communities, it has gradually weakened every society. The shadow creatures attacking villages are merely servants under its control, corrupted by dark pod energy. According to the firewolf, peace is impossible because creatures will always find reasons to fear one another. It believes that understanding is a weakness and that true order can only be achieved through absolute control. With the heart pod nearly corrupted, the firewolf plans to reshape the entire valley according to its own vision. Every conflict, every misunderstanding, and every act of hatred has strengthened its power. Ollie and Ivy finally realize that the problems facing their world are far greater than a simple body swap. The entire future of the valley now depends on stopping this creature before it gains complete control over the heart pod. As the confrontation escalates, a fierce battle erupts inside the sanctuary. Resistance fighters who accompanied Ollie and Ivy rush forward to defend the heart pod, but the firewolf proves incredibly powerful. Flames burst across the chamber, crystal structures shatter, and ancient mechanisms hidden within the sanctuary begin activating. Massive sections of the floor shift beneath everyone's feet while glowing pathways appear and disappear throughout the room. During the chaos, Ollie and Ivy become separated once again. Both are forced into different sections of the sanctuary where ancient magic subjects them to personal trials. Ollie is confronted by painful memories of the mistakes he made in the past, particularly the decision that contributed to the food crisis affecting his people. For years, he has carried guilt and self doubt, believing that he causes more problems than solutions. The sanctuary forces him to face those fears directly and accept that mistakes do not define a person's future. At the same time, Ivy faces challenges of her own. Throughout her life, she has constantly sought approval from others, desperate to prove her worth and earn respect from her community. Deep inside, she fears that she is not strong enough to make a meaningful difference. The sanctuary's magic brings those insecurities to the surface, forcing her to confront them. Instead of running from her fears, Ivy learns that courage comes from continuing forward despite uncertainty. As both characters overcome their personal struggles, they begin understanding themselves better than ever before. Their journey has never been only about changing bodies. It has also been about personal growth, empathy, and learning to see the world through someone else's perspective. These lessons become the key to surviving the sanctuary's trials. After overcoming the challenges, Ollie and Ivy finally reunite near the heart pod. The artifact is now dangerously unstable, and the corruption continues spreading across its surface at an alarming rate. The firewolf stands only moments away from completing its plan and gaining control over power capable of affecting the entire valley. For the first time since their adventure began, Ollie and Ivy stop focusing on their desire to return to their original forms. They realize that protecting the valley matters more than their personal problems. The friendship they have built throughout the journey has transformed them into true partners, willing to sacrifice everything for a greater cause. As the heart pod releases waves of unstable energy and the sanctuary trembles around them, both prepare for the final battle that will decide the fate of every species living in the valley. Standing before the unstable heart pod, Ollie and Ivy realize that the moment they have been moving toward since the beginning of their journey has finally arrived. The sanctuary trembles violently as waves of corrupted energy surge through its ancient halls. Cracks spread across the crystal structures surrounding the chamber, and pieces of the ceiling begin falling to the ground. At the center of the chaos stands the firewolf, determined to complete the corruption of the heart pod and seize control of its unimaginable power. Although fear fills the room, Ollie and Ivy no longer feel like the confused strangers who accidentally swapped bodies weeks earlier. Their experiences have transformed them. They have learned to trust one another, understand different perspectives, and overcome the fears that once controlled their decisions. Those lessons now become their greatest weapons. As the battle resumes, the firewolf unleashes powerful waves of dark energy that force everyone to retreat. Flames spread across the chamber while corrupted creatures emerge from hidden passages to defend their master. Resistance fighters struggle to hold them back, giving Ollie and Ivy an opportunity to reach the heart pod. However, the closer they get, the more intense the artifact's energy becomes. Ancient symbols illuminate the walls, and forgotten Zo technology begins activating throughout the sanctuary. Through fragments of visions, Ollie realizes that the heart pod was never intended to be a source of domination. Its purpose was to connect minds and create understanding between species. The original Dao believed that empathy was the strongest force in the world because it could break cycles of hatred before they turned into violence. The firewolf seeks to corrupt that purpose completely, transforming a symbol of unity into a weapon of control. While trying to reach the artifact, Ollie and Ivy are forced into a direct confrontation with the firewolf. The creature mocks their friendship, insisting that creatures from different backgrounds can never truly trust one another. It points to generations of conflict throughout the valley as proof that fear will always be stronger than understanding. For a brief moment, the argument shakes both heroes. They have witnessed prejudice, mistrust, and division throughout their journey. Yet they have also experienced kindness from unexpected places and discovered that many conflicts began because people never took the time to understand each other. Rather than accepting the firewolf's view of the world, Ollie and Ivy reject it completely. Their friendship itself is proof that change is possible. The creature's greatest weakness is its inability to believe in anything beyond fear. Determined to stop the corruption, the two friends work together to activate ancient mechanisms surrounding the heart pod. Using knowledge gathered throughout their adventure, they unlock hidden systems left behind by the Zo. Beams of light erupt across the chamber, connecting crystals that have remained dormant for centuries. The sanctuary responds as if recognizing their intentions. For the first time, the corruption spreading across the heart pod begins to slow. Furious, the firewolf launches a final assault. A massive battle erupts as energy collides throughout the sanctuary. The structure shakes harder than ever before, and it becomes clear that if the heart pod completely loses stability, the entire sanctuary could collapse. Every creature inside would be trapped beneath the ruins. As the conflict reaches its peak, Ollie and Ivy make a remarkable discovery. The heart pod cannot be healed through force. It responds only to genuine understanding and cooperation. Drawing upon everything they have learned, they channel their experiences into the artifact. Memories of friendship, sacrifice, forgiveness, and trust flow through the heart pod's energy. The effect is immediate. Bright light begins pushing back the corruption. The dark cracks covering the artifact slowly disappear, replaced by pure energy similar to the visions of the ancient world. For the first time, the firewolf appears afraid. The power it spent years building begins slipping away because the very foundation of its influence, fear, is being challenged.
As the conflict reaches its peak, Ollie and Ivy make a remarkable discovery. The heart pod cannot be healed through force. It responds only to genuine understanding and cooperation. Drawing upon everything they have learned, they channel their experiences into the artifact. Memories of friendship, sacrifice, forgiveness, and trust flow through the heart pod's energy. The effect is immediate. Bright light begins pushing back the corruption. The dark cracks covering the artifact slowly disappear, replaced by pure energy similar to the visions of the ancient world. For the first time, the fire wolf appears afraid. The power it spent years building begins slipping away because the very foundation of its influence, fear, is being. As the brilliant wave of energy released by the restored heart pod spreads across the valley, a sense of peace begins replacing the fear that has dominated the land for generations. The corruption controlling countless creatures disappears, and the violent influence of the fire wolf finally fades away. Inside the sanctuary, the surviving resistance fighters watch in amazement as ancient crystals regain their original glow. For the first time in centuries, the sanctuary feels alive again, functioning exactly as the Zoo intended. Yet, despite their victory, Ollie and Ivy quickly realize that their journey is not over. The heart pod may have been healed, but the consequences of its activation are still unfolding. Powerful energy continues flowing through the ancient structure, and nobody knows exactly what will happen next. As they approach the heart pod, a new vision appears before them. Unlike the fragmented memories they witnessed earlier, this vision is clearer and more detailed than anything they have seen before. Ancient zoo guardians emerge as glowing figures made of pure light. These guardians explain that restoring the heart pod has awakened its deepest function. The artifact was designed not only to create understanding between individuals, but also to preserve harmony throughout the valley. Whenever balance was threatened, the heart pod would test those who sought its power. The trials were never meant to measure strength or intelligence. Instead, they measured empathy, compassion, and the ability to place the needs of others above personal desires. Ollie and Ivy have passed those tests, but one final choice remains before the heart pod can complete its work. The Guardians reveal a difficult truth. Returning Ollie and Ivy to their original bodies will require a significant amount of the heart pod's remaining energy. The artifact has already used most of its power repairing the damage caused by the Firewolf's corruption. If they choose to restore themselves immediately, the valley will recover more slowly from the devastation. However, if they allow the heart pod to direct its remaining energy toward healing the valley first, their own transformation may remain permanent for an unknown period of time. The decision forces both friends into a painful dilemma. After everything they have endured, the opportunity to return to their normal lives is finally within reach. Yet, choosing themselves could delay recovery for countless communities still suffering across the valley. For several moments, neither speaks. Ollie thinks about his family and the Puku island he has longed to see again. He remembers the guilt he carried for years and how desperately he wanted a chance to make things right. Ivy thinks about her clan and the life she left behind when the adventure began. She imagines returning home and sharing everything she has learned. Both understand what is at stake, yet, as they reflect on their journey, They also remember the countless creatures affected by the conflict. Entire villages were damaged, families were separated, communities remained trapped by the consequences of fear and division. Gradually, both arrive at the same conclusion: the valley's future matters more than their personal wishes. Without hesitation, Ollie and Ivy choose to direct the heart pod's remaining energy toward healing the valley. The Guardians are deeply moved by their decision. According to ancient Zoe teachings, true harmony can only be achieved when individuals are willing to place the well being of others above themselves. Their selfless choice proves that they have fully understood the purpose behind the pods. As the decision is made, the heart pod releases another magnificent burst of light. Energy spreads across forests, rivers, mountains, and villages. Areas damaged by corruption begin recovering. Crops start growing again. Polluted waterways clear. Ancient routes connecting different regions slowly reopen, giving isolated communities opportunities to reconnect for the first time in generations. In the days that follow, Ollie and Ivy travel through parts of the recovering valley. Although they remain in swap bodies, they no longer view the transformation as a curse. Everywhere they go, they witness positive changes inspired by their actions. Creatures who once avoided one another begin sharing resources. Former rivals start working together to rebuild damaged settlements. Stories about the defeat of the fire wolf spread rapidly. But what inspires people most is the friendship between a Puku and a Javan, who overcame generations of prejudice. Their example becomes a symbol of hope. For the first time, many creatures begin questioning the assumptions they inherited from previous generations. As their reputation grows, Ollie and Ivy find themselves becoming reluctant heroes. Communities invite them to share their experiences and explain what they learned during their travels. Through these conversations, they help others understand that fear often comes from ignorance rather than reality. They explain how living in each other's bodies reveal challenges neither side previously understood. The more they speak, the more people begin listening. Slowly but surely, the divisions that once defined the valley start weakening. While disagreements and conflicts still exist, there is now a growing willingness to seek understanding instead of immediately assuming the worst about others. One evening, while standing atop a hill overlooking the recovering valley, Ollie and Ivy reflect on how much their lives have changed. What began as an accident has transformed them into individuals neither could have imagined becoming. They are stronger, wiser, and far more compassionate than before. Although uncertainty remains about whether they will ever return to their original forms, neither regrets the choices they made. Their friendship has become one of the most important things in their lives. As the sun sets across the valley, they receive an unexpected message from the Zoo Guardians. The heart pod is slowly regenerating its power, and when the time is right, one final opportunity to restore balance may appear. Until then, their work is not finished. Several months pass after the defeat of the fire wolf, and the valley begins changing in ways that once seemed impossible. Communities that had spent generations avoiding one another are slowly rebuilding connections. Trade routes reopen, shared projects emerge, and creatures from different species start working together to repair the damage left behind by years of fear and conflict. Although the transformation is gradual, it is visible everywhere. Forests damaged by corruption are recovering, abandoned settlements are being restored, and ancient pathways once buried beneath landslides are becoming active again. Throughout these changes, Ollie and Ivy continue traveling across the valley, helping communities understand one another and encouraging cooperation wherever they go. Their friendship has become a symbol of what can happen when individuals choose empathy instead of prejudice. Despite the progress, however, challenges remain. Many creatures still struggle to let go of old fears. Some leaders worry that reopening connections with outsiders could create new risks. Others remain skeptical of the stories surrounding the Heartpod and the Firewolf. Ollie and Ivy quickly learn that changing hearts and minds is far more difficult than winning a battle. While defeating a powerful enemy required courage, helping people overcome generations of mistrust requires patience. During their travels, they often encounter communities divided by disagreements, misunderstandings, or lingering resentment. Rather than forcing solutions upon others, they share their own experiences. By explaining how they once viewed each other as enemies before learning the truth, they encourage others to question assumptions that may not reflect reality. Meanwhile, deep within the sanctuary, the heart pod continues restoring its energy. The Zoo Guardians occasionally communicate with Ollie and Ivy through visions, offering guidance about the valley's future. During one such vision, the Guardians reveal an important warning. Although the Fire Wolf has been defeated, the forces that created the Fire Wolf still exist. Fear, pride, and division have not disappeared from the world. If future generations forget the lessons of the past, another conflict could eventually emerge. The Guardians explain that lasting peace depends not on magical artifacts, but on the choices individuals make every day. The heart pod can encourage understanding, but it cannot force creatures to care about one another. That responsibility belongs to the valley itself. These revelations lead Ollie and Ivy to focus on something even more important than rebuilding physical structures. They begin organizing gatherings where members of different communities can meet, share stories, and discuss their experiences openly. At first, attendance is limited. Many participants arrive carrying years of suspicion. Yet, something remarkable happens as conversations continue. Creatures discover that their struggles are often similar despite differences in appearance, culture, or background. Families worried about food shortages realize that neighboring communities face the same concerns. Young individuals dreaming of adventure discover they share similar hopes regardless of species. Slowly, understanding begins replacing assumptions. These gatherings become one of the most successful efforts in the valley's recovery. As their influence grows, Ollie and Ivy eventually return to regions connected to their own pasts. Ollie visits the Puku Island for the first time since his adventure began. The experience is emotional. Years earlier, he left carrying guilt over mistakes that contributed to the food crisis affecting his people. Now he returns as someone who helped save the entire valley. More importantly, he returns with a completely new understanding of the world. His family welcomes him warmly, and many community members who once blamed him now recognize how much he has grown. Rather than focusing on old failures, They celebrate the role he played in creating a better future. The acceptance brings Ollie a sense of peace he has been seeking for years. Ivy experiences something similar when she reunites with her own clan. In the past, she constantly worried about proving her worth and earning respect. Throughout her journey, however, she learned that true confidence comes from understanding herself rather than seeking approval from others. Her people are amazed by the stories she shares and inspired by the friendships she has formed. Instead of being remembered as a reckless dreamer, she becomes an example of courage and growth. The reunion allows her to appreciate how much she has changed since the beginning of the adventure. Even with these joyful moments, one question continues lingering in both their minds. Will they ever return to their original bodies? The heart pod has not yet regained enough power to reverse the transformation. Over time, however, Ollie and Ivy realize that the answer matters less than it once did. Their identities are no longer defined solely by physical appearance. Living as another species taught them lessons that would have been impossible otherwise. They now understand perspectives that few others could ever fully appreciate. Whether they remain swapped or eventually return to normal, those experiences will always be part of who they are. One evening, while attending a gathering near the sanctuary, Ollie and Ivy receive another vision from the Zoo Guardians. This message is different from previous ones. The heart pod is finally nearing full restoration. Soon, a final ceremony can take place. During that ceremony, balance may be fully restored and the future path of both friends will be determined. The announcement fills them with excitement, curiosity, and a hint of nervousness. After everything they have experienced together, the moment they once desired more than anything is finally approaching. Yet neither knows exactly what the future holds, or whether they are truly ready for the next chapter of their lives. As news spreads that the heart pod is nearly restored, excitement begins building throughout the valley. Creatures from every region talk about the upcoming ceremony that the Zoo Guardians have foretold. For many, the event represents more than the possible return of Ollie and Ivy to their original bodies. It symbolizes the completion of a journey that changed the valley forever. Communities that once viewed each other with suspicion are now preparing to gather in the same place. Ancient pathways fill with travelers moving toward the sanctuary, eager to witness what may become one of the most important moments in modern history. Everywhere Ollie and Ivy go, they are greeted not as strangers from rival species, but as friends whose actions help create a new beginning for everyone. Despite the celebration surrounding them, both Ollie and Ivy find themselves reflecting on how much their lives have changed. When they first met, they barely trusted one another. Their conversations often turned into arguments, and each believed the worst about the other's people. Now, after months of traveling together, overcoming dangers, and learning from one another, they cannot imagine facing the world alone. The possibility of returning to their original forms fills them with mixed emotions. They are grateful for the chance to regain their old lives, yet, they also understand that the body swap played a major role in shaping who they have become. Without it, neither would have discovered the truths hidden beyond the boundaries of their own communities. As the day of the ceremony approaches, the sanctuary becomes a center of activity. Representatives from many species arrive to participate in discussions about the future of the valley. For the first time in generations, leaders gather not to negotiate conflicts but to explore opportunities for cooperation. Plans are proposed for shared trade networks, educational exchanges, and joint efforts to protect important regions of the valley. Ollie and Ivy are amazed by the progress. Although disagreements still exist, there is a noticeable willingness to listen that was absent before. The divisions that once seemed permanent are beginning to weaken, replaced by cautious optimism and growing trust. The night before the ceremony, the Zoo Guardians appear once again. They guide Ollie and Ivy into a vision unlike any they have experienced before. Within this vision, the two friends witness possible futures branching in different directions. Some futures show a valley that continues growing stronger through cooperation and understanding. Others reveal darker outcomes where fear gradually returns and old conflicts re-emerge. The Guardians explain that no magical artifact can permanently guarantee peace. Every generation must choose whether to learn from history or repeat its mistakes. The heart pod can provide guidance, but the responsibility for the future ultimately belongs to those living within the valley. The lesson reinforces everything Ollie and Ivy have learned during their journey. When the ceremony finally begins, creatures from across the valley gather around the restored heart pod. The artifact shines brighter than ever before, filling the sanctuary with warm light. Ancient mechanisms dormant for centuries activate once again, and the crystal structures surrounding the chamber pulse with energy. The Zoo Guardians emerge before the crowd and acknowledge the sacrifices made by countless individuals throughout the valley's recovery. They speak about the importance of empathy, understanding, and courage. Most importantly, they recognize Ollie and Ivy for demonstrating these values when it mattered most. Their willingness to place the needs of others above their own desires helped restore balance not only to the heart pod but also to the valley itself.
As the ceremony reaches its climax, the hot pot releases a magnificent surge of energy that surrounds Ollie and Ivy. The light becomes so bright that everyone watching is forced to shield their eyes. Memories of their entire journey flash through their minds: their first meeting, their arguments, their adventures, the defeat of the firewolf, and the friendships they formed along the way. Every lesson, every sacrifice, and every moment of growth becomes part of the transformation. The energy flowing through the sanctuary feels different from anything they have experienced before. Rather than simply reversing a spell, it seems to be recognizing the people they have become. When the light finally begins to fade, the crowd waits in complete silence. Nobody knows exactly what the heart pod has decided. The future of Ollie and Ivy hangs in the balance. Have they returned to their original bodies? Has the transformation remained permanent? Even the guardians appear unusually quiet as the energy settles. For several long moments, uncertainty fills the sanctuary. Then, as the final traces of light disappear, the outcome of the ceremony is finally revealed. The answer leaves everyone watching overwhelmed with emotion and brings Ollie and Ivy's extraordinary journey to its final chapter. As the brilliant light surrounding the heart pod slowly fades, complete silence fills the sanctuary. Thousands of eyes remain fixed on Ollie and Ivy, waiting to discover the outcome of the ceremony. For several moments, neither of them moves. The energy released by the heart pod had been unlike anything they had ever experienced, carrying memories, emotions, and lessons from every stage of their journey. The crowd watches anxiously as the glowing particles finally disappear into the air. When the light is completely gone, the answer becomes clear. The heart pod has restored balance. Ollie and Ivy stand once again in their original bodies. After everything they endured, the transformation that changed their lives has finally come to an end. Cheers echo throughout the sanctuary as creatures from every corner of the valley celebrate the moment. Families reunite with loved ones, friends embrace one another, and even the Zoo Guardians seem pleased by the outcome. Yet, while Ollie and Ivy have regained their original forms, they immediately realize that they are no longer the same individuals who began this adventure. The journey taught them lessons that will remain with them forever. Ollie remembers what it felt like to live among the Javans and experience their struggles firsthand. Ivy remembers seeing the world through the eyes of a Puku and understanding the challenges faced by his people. Those experiences changed how they view everything around them. Physical appearances may have returned to normal, but the empathy they gained can never be taken away. Looking around the sanctuary, they notice something equally important. Creatures from different species are standing together, sharing stories and celebrating side by side. Only months earlier, such a scene would have seemed impossible. The valley that once lived in fear and division has begun moving toward a future built upon cooperation and understanding. While many challenges remain ahead, there is now genuine hope that old mistakes will not be repeated. Following the ceremony, the Zoo Guardians deliver one final message. They explain that the heart pod's greatest purpose was never body swapping magic or extraordinary power. Its true purpose was to remind creatures that understanding another person's perspective is the foundation of peace. Throughout history, fear has often grown when individuals stop listening to one another. The Guardians warn that future generations must continue practicing empathy if they wish to preserve the harmony now emerging across the valley. No magical artifact can permanently solve every problem. The responsibility for maintaining peace belongs to the people themselves. With that final lesson shared, the Guardians begin fading from the world. Their duty is complete. The knowledge they protected for centuries has finally been passed on to those capable of carrying it forward. In the weeks that follow, remarkable changes continue spreading across the valley. Communities establish partnerships that would have been unthinkable before the defeat of the firewolf. Trade flourishes between regions that once refused to communicate. Young creatures travel to learn about cultures beyond their own homes. Cooperative projects help restore damaged forests, rivers, and settlements. Most importantly, new friendships begin forming across species lines. The example set by Ollie and Ivy inspires others to step beyond old prejudices and build relationships based on trust. Although disagreements still occur, as they always will, people increasingly choose conversation over conflict. The cycle of fear that once empowered the firewolf has been weakened by understanding and mutual respect. For Ollie, returning home is one of the most emotional moments of his life. The guilt he carried for years finally disappears. His community no longer remembers him as the young Puku responsible for a mistake during the food crisis. Instead, they recognize him as someone who helped save the entire valley. More importantly, Ollie learns to forgive himself. He understands that growth comes from learning from mistakes rather than being defined by them. Meanwhile, Ivy returns to her clan with a renewed sense of confidence. She no longer feels pressured to prove her worth to others because she now understands her own value. The experiences she gained during the adventure have given her a sense of purpose that cannot be measured by anyone else's approval. Both characters discover that true strength comes not from power or recognition, but from personal growth and compassion. Although they return to their separate homes, Ollie and Ivy remain close friends. Their bond is stronger than distance, species, or circumstance. They continue meeting regularly, helping organize gatherings that encourage cooperation throughout the valley. Together, they share stories about their journey and teach younger generations the lessons they learned along the way. Whenever conflicts arise between communities, many now look to Ollie and Ivy as examples of what can be achieved through understanding. Their friendship becomes part of the valley's history, remembered as a symbol of unity during a time when fear threatened to divide everyone. The film ends with Ollie and Ivy standing atop a hill overlooking the valley they helped save. The landscape below is alive with activity as creatures from different backgrounds work together to build a brighter future. As the sun begins setting, they reflect on how an accidental body swap changed their lives forever. What started as a strange magical accident became an adventure filled with danger, friendship, sacrifice, and personal growth. They realized that the most important transformation was never the change in their bodies, it was the change in their hearts. With hope for the future and confidence in the friendships they have built, the two friends watch the valley move toward a new era of peace. The camera slowly pulls back, revealing the vast world around them, and the story concludes with a simple but powerful message. Understanding others is often the first step toward changing the world.